All right, so on Thursday, we started looking at slope-intercept form, and we talked about how when the y is by itself in a linear equation, then m is the number that's in front of the x, and m stands for the slope. And then b, we didn't practice a whole lot on Friday. B represents the y-intercept, and that means the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. Now, those things are going to be important when we start trying to graph some of these lines. So here are the steps to graph a linear equation when it is in slope-intercept form. The first thing that we want to do is isolate the y if necessary. That would be if it's not already in slope-intercept form, if y is not by itself, then we need to rearrange it so we can figure out what m and b are. Now, number two, we want to then identify the slope. Now remember, the slope is m, and we want to identify the y-intercept, and the y-intercept is b. We want to plot the y-intercept on the y-axis. The first thing that we use is the y-intercept. Then we use the slope. So step 4 says count off the rise over run of the slope from the y-intercept and plot several points. So you're kind of going to make a staircase. I'll show you what that looks like. Here's a couple of tips. When you're counting off your slope, always count to the right. So you change your up or down based on whether the slope is positive or negative. Then you want to connect the line using a straight edge. So here we go. Let's try a couple of these. We're just going to do a couple of examples today, and then you're going to practice some on your own. This is something I know you spent a lot of time on in 8th grade, so hopefully this is review. So for number 5, the first thing that I want to do is figure out my slope and my y-intercept. Notice that y is already by itself, so I know it's in slope-intercept form. So our m is -3, and our b is +4. Now, it's really helpful for our slope to look like a fraction, so we can make that into a fraction by putting it over 1. And I would strongly suggest that you do that, because remember, we need a rise and a run when we graph the slope. So the first thing that we graph is the y-intercept. Since b is equal to 4, I go on the y-axis, which is the vertical axis, and I go up to 4, and I plot my first point. That is now my starting point. So anything else I do for this line, I'm going to go from there. Don't go back to the middle of your graph. So now, since the slope is -3 over 1, the -3 is my rise. So since it's negative, that tells me I'm going to go down 3 and then to the right 1. And that's how I get my next point. And now we can do that a few more times. Down 3, right 1. Down 3, right 1. Now, if I ever get to a point where I run out of room, we could do the exact opposite in the other direction. So instead of down and to the right, the opposite would be up and to the left. And you see that ends up lining up with all my other points just exactly right. And so then we use a straight edge to go ahead and connect those lines, and we get a line that looks like this. Don't forget, use something to help you make a nice straight line. Draw your line edge to edge on your graph, and then use arrows on the ends to show that it goes on forever. Okay? Go ahead and pause the video and try number 6 on your own so you can see if you are on the right track. Again, the first thing we're going to do is start with our m and our b. So in this case, what you should have for m is 2 over 3, and that's already a fraction, so I don't need to add any 1s. And then our y-intercept is -1. So b comes before m in the alphabet, so that's a way that we can remember that we use the b first. And so I go down to -1 on my graph. That's going to be here on the y-axis. And from there, my slope says, since it's positive this time, up 2 and to the right 3. Up 2, right 3. And again, I can go the opposite direction. Down 2 and backwards 3. Down 2 and backwards 3. And now I grab my ruler and we connect these dots just like that. And so here is my line. I can see that my slope is up 2 and over 3, and I can see that my y-intercept is -1. So hopefully you remember this from before. This is all that we're going to work on today, is graphing lines in slope-intercept form. Okay? I will see you guys on Tuesday.